All right, so today we're diving deep into Joseph Aminian's essay, From Chaos to Clarity.
Okay.
And, it's a really interesting look at how the pursuit of, stability as a society might have actually led us to a place where we kind of just accept good enough instead of striving for our full potential as humans.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that idea?
Well, I think Aminian makes a pretty compelling argument about how those early human communities, they were really driven by that need for safety and well-being.
Yeah.
And that kind of led to the formation of governments and systems that prioritize stability above everything else.
Yeah, it's like we traded a constant distress for kind of a collective comfort zone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like everyone just kind of agreed, okay, this is good enough. Let's not rock the boat.
Yeah, and Aminian traces this idea all the way back to John Locke,
Oh, wow.
And his ideas about the social contract, that's the foundation of a lot of modern governments.
Right, we give up some of our individual freedoms
Exactly.
in exchange for the protection and stability of the group.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how these fundamental philosophical concepts actually connect to our everyday lives,
Absolutely.
And then Aminian brings in this concept from physics called entropy.
Yeah.
Which basically says that as systems get more complex, like societies, they tend to become more chaotic.
So more people, more rules, more institutions.
Right.
It all adds up to more potential for disorder, even though the original goal was to create stability.
Exactly. It's a real paradox, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's a really thought-provoking idea.
It is. And to kind of illustrate this point, Aminian highlights some research suggesting that there's an optimal size for human communities.
Oh, interesting.
When it comes to social cohesion and longevity.
Okay.
And these groups of 50, 150 and 500 individuals. They seem to hit a sweet spot for connection and cooperation.
Right.
Without things getting too chaotic.
Which makes you wonder if our massive modern societies with millions or billions of people are inherently less stable, or less conducive to individual well-being.
Yeah, that's a key question that Aminian raises.
Right.
He suggests that early leaders, when they were faced with this complexity of growing societies, they often made decisions based on what they thought was the least harmful option.
Makes sense.
Given the limited knowledge they had at the time.
Yeah.
But over time, those compromises could have led to a cultural acceptance of mediocrity.
Like a settling for good enough, just because it seemed to maintain stability.
Exactly.
Wow. So we might be living with the legacy of those early decisions, even if we don't realize it.
It's possible, yeah.
It's like our societal operating system is programmed for a certain level of what's considered acceptable dysfunction.
Yeah, I think Aminian would agree with that.
And he links this to the concept of path dependence, right?
Yes.
The idea that early choices can kind of lock societies into specific trajectories.
Right, it's like a river carving its path. Yeah.
Once those initial grooves are set, it's really hard to change course.
So we might be stuck in this pattern of mediocrity that's been ingrained over generations.
Yeah. That's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is. It really makes you think about how these historical forces are still shaping our world today.
Absolutely.
It's like we're all living in the shadow of those early decisions, whether we're aware of it or not.
And that's just the beginning of Aminian's exploration.
Yeah. I'm really curious to hear where he takes this idea next.
Me too.
There's definitely a lot more to unpack here.
Definitely. And it's interesting how that acceptance of mediocrity gets reinforced through the narratives we create and share.
You mean stories, myths, even just cultural beliefs?
Exactly, those kinds of things. Aminian argues that these narratives, they often come from a deep-seated fear of our own limitations.
What are we really capable of?
Yeah, and especially the fear of death. That's a big one.
Right. We don't like to think about our own mortality. No, we don't. And these stories, they offer us a sense of comfort and control, in a world that can feel chaotic and unpredictable.
So we cling to these stories, even if they're not entirely true or even helpful, because they give us that psychological security blanket.
Exactly.
It's like we'd rather believe a comforting lie than face a difficult truth.
And here's the thing, even highly educated people can fall prey to this.
Oh, really?
We might mistake our specialized knowledge for a complete understanding of the world.
We think we have all the answers just because we're experts in one specific area.
Right, and we might even turn science into a rigid dogma.
Instead of using it as a tool for critical thinking.
Exactly.
That's a bit unsettling. It's like we can get trapped in our own little bubbles of knowledge.
Yeah, and it can prevent us from seeing the bigger picture.
So how do we break free from these narratives that might be holding us back?
Well, Aminian suggests we need to kind of shift our focus inward.
Like turn our attention away from the outside world.
Mm-hmm. He emphasizes the importance of introspection and mindfulness.
To understand the why questions.
Yeah, the why questions that drive human behavior.
Instead of looking for answers in the outside world, we need to look within.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But where do we even begin?
Well, Aminian highlights this concept of interoception.
Interoception.
It's basically the ability to sense and interpret internal bodily signals.
So becoming aware of what's happening inside our own bodies.
Right.
Like noticing our heartbeat, our breath, our digestion, those kinds of sensations.
Exactly. But Aminian stresses that it's important to approach interoception with an open mind.
Okay.
Free from judgment. You know, when we label those sensations as good or bad, we actually distort them.
It's like we're adding another layer of narrative on top of our physical sensations.
Right. Instead of just experiencing them, we're judging them.
Which takes us further away from truly understanding ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's where mindfulness comes in.
Yes, Aminian presents mindfulness as a practice.
Okay.
To help us pause before reacting.
Like interrupting that impulse to label our internal experiences.
Exactly. We're training ourselves to become more aware of our internal landscape.
Without immediately jumping to conclusions or judgments.
Right. It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot.
We gain a choice in how we respond.
To those sensations and emotions.
That's powerful.
It is. And Aminian also talks about these leaky circuits in the brain.
Leaky circuits, what are those?
He uses that metaphor to describe the way our brains get stuck.
Okay.
In repetitive patterns of thought and emotional reactivity.
Like those thought patterns that just keep playing over and over again.
Exactly. And those patterns are often rooted in past experiences and ingrained narratives.
So mindfulness, by interrupting those automatic reactions, helps repair those leaky circuits.
Yes, promoting internal balance and harmony.
It's like rewiring our brains for resilience and emotional regulation.
Exactly. Instead of getting hijacked by old patterns.
We can choose a more skillful response.
Right. And this is where Aminian connects this back to achieving balance and unlocking our potential.
Okay, I'm following you.
He suggests that mindfulness, through this process of interoception and self-awareness, it cultivates a sense of inner peace and harmony.
So it's not just about calming the internal chatter, it's about creating a more stable internal environment.
Right.
Where we can actually access our true potential.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a really profound idea.
It is, and Aminian goes even further, suggesting that this inner harmony, it naturally extends outward, influencing our interactions with the world around us.
So our internal state has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Impacting not only our own well-being, but also the well-being of those around us.
Precisely. He even connects this to the concept of the righteous person found in many wisdom traditions.
Interesting.
Someone who has achieved this emotional and cognitive balance through mindfulness and self-awareness.
So it's not about being good or bad. It's about finding a point of equilibrium within oneself.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense when we're constantly reacting to external stimuli. It's hard to find that center point. But if we can regulate our internal world, we can approach the outer world with more clarity and intention.
Exactly. We become more like that righteous person capable of creating harmony.
Instead of perpetuating chaos.
Right.
I'm starting to see what Aminian means by from chaos to clarity.
Yes, and this is where his argument gets even more profound.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
He links this inner harmony to the concept of the soul.
The soul? Wow. This is where it gets really interesting.
He suggests that the soul resides in the gut.
In the gut.
And it communicates with us through what's known as the gut-brain axis.
So he's not just speaking metaphorically here. He's actually connecting the soul to a physical part of the body.
Yes. He's drawing on both ancient wisdom and modern science.
Okay.
You know, in many traditions, the gut is considered the seat of intuition, wisdom, even our deepest desires.
Interesting.
And modern research is showing that the gut microbiome...
The trillions of bacteria that live in our intestines.
Exactly. It plays a huge role in our physical and mental health.
Wow. So there's this constant communication happening between our gut and our brain.
There is.
So by tuning into our gut feelings, we might actually be tapping into a deeper source of wisdom.
That's what Aminian is suggesting.
That's fascinating.
He proposes that by aligning ourselves with our soul's calling,
which is essentially living in accordance with our deepest truths and values.
Right.
We foster a sense of peace and harmony.
That naturally radiates outward.
It's like he's saying that our internal balance isn't just about feeling good. It's about tapping into a deeper purpose.
Yeah.
And aligning ourselves with something greater than ourselves.
Exactly.
But how do we know what our soul's calling is? It sounds kind of mystical.
Well, Aminian doesn't give us a step-by-step guide.
Okay.
But he offers some clues. He suggests that our soul communicates its needs through our internal experiences.
Those very signals we learn to recognize through interoception and mindfulness.
Right. He even goes so far as to say that our soul guides us by revealing our limitations.
So it's like our soul is a wise but subtle guide, whispering to us through our bodies, our emotions, our intuition. It's up to us to pay attention and learn to decipher its language.
Exactly. It all comes back to Aminian's main point, healing starts when we recognize and address those irregularities inside us, It's about aligning ourselves with that natural order of things, as he calls it.
Yeah, it's like getting back in sync with the way things are supposed to be.
Exactly. And he says the self-healing leads to prosperity outside of us.
So it's a cycle.
Yeah, like a flow of positive energy between us and the world around us.
I'm really seeing how all these pieces of Aminian's argument fit together. It's a pretty radical idea when you think about it, but it's also simple in a way.
I agree.
Like the key to a better world is each of us looking inside and committing to self-awareness, mindfulness, and healing.
Right.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things.
No.
It's taking responsibility for our own well-being.
And then that change spreads outward.
Precisely. And he ends by reminding us that we're all connected. He even quotes that old saying, "We are one people with one heart under the Creator."
It's not just a nice sentiment.
It's a fundamental truth that points us toward healing together.
Toward a more harmonious world.
Wow. This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've covered so much, from civilization's beginnings to the power of stories, the importance of interoception and mindfulness, and that deep connection between our inner and outer worlds.
It's clear that Aminian's essay is more than just an intellectual exercise.
Oh, definitely.
He's giving us a roadmap for personal and societal change.
One that starts with finding balance within ourselves.
And listening to our own inner wisdom.
You've summed it up perfectly. From chaos to clarity isn't just about understanding the world, it's about changing it.
Exactly.
He's challenging us to be more conscious, more aware, and more in tune with our deepest truths.
Not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
And he leaves us with a powerful question to think about.
Oh yes, the question.
What internal irregularities are keeping you awake at night?
It really makes you stop and think.
It does. It's so easy to get distracted by the chaos out there.
Yeah.
But Aminian reminds us that real change starts by looking inward.
Now, what's going on inside us?
It's a call to action, to turn inward and examine those parts of ourselves that might be out of balance.
He's basically saying if we want to heal the world, we need to start by healing ourselves.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
We can't create a balanced world if we haven't found that balance within.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into from chaos to clarity, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away?
I think Aminian's essay offers a really powerful message of hope and empowerment.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we have more control than we might think. Yeah. We can't control the chaos of the world, but we can learn to regulate our own inner world.
Cultivating a sense of peace, clarity, and purpose.
Exactly. And as we do that, we become like beacons of light radiating that energy outward.
Creating positive change that can transform the world around us.
That's the idea.
Beautifully said. So, to you listening, we'll leave you with this challenge inspired by Aminian's question.
Okay.
What steps can you take today to start healing from within?
Yeah.
What small acts of self-care, mindfulness, or introspection can you commit to? Knowing that your inner transformation isn't just for you.
Right.
It's for the well-being of everyone.
Exactly.
The path to a more balanced and prosperous future starts within each of us.
It does.
Embrace that power and let your light shine bright.
Yeah.
Until next time.